and how much to share with me. So, like for example, well, but just 5 or 6 years ago, right? I was well, I mean, I was hired in 2009, and one of my jobs was to teach this master's students. The university had some kind of money from the Korean government. It's called the ARC program or something, where they were going to. It was partly to build relationships with the Philippines as an emerging economy, and emerging market economy. And also that the Filipinos, they have two native languages, English and Tagalog. And so they were going to bring over these Filipino students who would live with the Korean students and help them with their English and at the same time also getting their master's degree. So I had to teach these different master's courses. And the students, of course, that they brought in, I mean, we interviewed them on Skype. At least I participated in some of those interviews. And of course, they were pretty impressive students, Filipino students. But I didn't have all of the students. There was a significant number of students that came. I didn't have all of them as students. And one whom I did not have, whom I still do not know who it is. This student. Because the Filipino students wouldn't tell me. They didn't want to tell me, and that's okay. I didn't really need to know. But that the student turned out to be a trans student, and the student started dressing in women's clothes. And the Korean students living in the residence hall told their parents, and their parents complained to the university, and the university had to deal with this problem, because this is a conservative place. It's a conservative society. So the way the university reconciled these conflicting pressures was to allow the student to continue with their study, but they could not live in the residence hall anymore. So they had to leave the residence hall, but they still got their master's degree and kept their scholarship. But that did not satisfy the Filipino government. I heard the Filipino government was very unhappy with how the university dealt with that situation, and there was some problem that the university, the Filipino government would not cooperate with the university in finding future students. So that's one example. I just talked with another student, and I told another student a case of another graduate student that I had who was from Bolivia, and he turned out that he was gay. And he wanted to, I got the sense he wanted to be openly gay here, because he wanted to make a statement about, human rights, and about, and he wanted to work for social change, and I was worried that, as an international student, that might be, it might be risky for him, because only here for 6 months. We're only here for one semester. He was only here for one semester, and I'm not certain how the Korean students in the residence hall and the dormitory would have reacted because I don't think anybody here is openly gay, and at least I haven't heard of any cases, and so there was, and then there was another student. Again, I just heard this through professors telling me there was an Australian student, a European Australian student who came here, and he was evidently gay, and he was looking for a boyfriend, and he approached some Korean guy, and this Korean guy, and there was a miscommunication, and the Korean told his parents, and the parents complained, and again, it caused a scandal. So there seems to be this tendency that on one hand, the students are adults, they're all over 18, so they're not children, and they're adults. But at the same time, the university confronts this need to, or this incentive to take care of the students. But I mean, if you're going to take care of somebody, you have to also be willing to restrict their behavior. You say, look, you can't do this. Like, for example, right? I was told students cannot stay out after 1 o'clock. because if they stay out after 1 o'clock, they lock the door, the residents, so they can't come in. And the point is to make the point that you should be back here before 1 o'clock. And if you're not going to stay out, which tells me that they're trying to shape the students' behavior. So how to go about, and then of course the most recent case, and I don't know if this is how this relates to what you just told me, because this is the first time I didn't know they were doing tests on students. I don't think I ever saw that before, but like, was it 5-6 years ago? I went jogging in the morning, and there was a police car parked outside of the university early in the morning. So I went to start to teach my class, and I was talking about things, and nobody told me. The students told me that one of this girl student who was from France, French university, but she had an Algerian last name, that she was found dead in her bed. And I don't know what the cause. I heard one gossip, because only gossip. Nobody told me anything, that she somehow involved alcohol. And but then another person said that there was some kind of heart problem, which had never been diagnosed, that caused this, or maybe it was a combination of both. So you're telling me that they actually are testing. I mean, there's no reason why they would tell me, but I'm wondering if it's basically a response to that they have to see if the students are going in a direction that they shouldn't go. That might manifest itself in alcohol abuse, and that's become a big issue with the pandemic. That the pandemic has led to a strong upsurge in mental health issues. So I don't know how much of that is also connected with this kind of test. It's surprising to me, because I've been involved in international education since 1994. I was in Bulgaria, at the American University in Bulgaria, and there was 1,000 students at the university, and half of them were not Bulgarian. The other 500 came from 40 different countries. So it was all about international student studying. These students also were very ambitious and but there was never any kind of, I never heard any story that they were ever tested. Which I'm saying, well, this is maybe a good thing. The university has done something. They're trying to do something to monitor what is happening. But I'm wondering how much of it is connected with the pandemic. But there's no way I mean, I would have to ask, but nobody, because nobody tells me these things. I'm not involved in anything like that. So, so I guess in terms of the Trump and Hampton Turner textbook, cultural differences would lead to stress, particularly as people are looking for, what are they looking for? They're looking for friendship. They don't want to be lonely. They don't want to, they would like to, ideally they would, because people, as young people, they're thinking about their future, and, finding maybe somebody that they can have an intimate relationship with, and and how the cultural differences that in the Trump and Hampton Turner book show or manifest themselves, and people make mistakes, and that we call miscommunication. I mean, so were you surprised by some aspects of the culture when you came here? I mean, or they look pretty, I mean, you're from Belgium, right? But I thought you told me, you said.
No, I'm Cambodian, but yeah. I'm from a French university.
Okay. So you're studying at a French university, but your family's in Cambodia?
Yes.
So what are your senses as a citizen of Cambodia and Cambodian culture? How did you notice anything interesting in terms of comparisons with Korean culture?
I think it's it's more similar than it is different, because there's like a lot of respect for elders and things like that. But I find, like, as an international student here, it's hard to make friends with Korean students. Like, you said it would make sense after the pandemic for people to seek out friendships, but it's harder for like Korean, like if they know that I'm not Korean, they keep their distance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do that with, I mean, I don't know, of course it's different because I'm older, but when I was telling other students when I first got here, you know, for example, there used to be a cafeteria on the first floor that sold, you know, 3 meals a day, and you know there would be people always eating there, and I would go and eat there, and I would take my food and go sit down somewhere, and I'd like to be alone, you know, feel relax, enjoy the food, and Koreans, the first 6 months that Koreans would frequently come and sit down in front of me and eat with me, and I don't know, it was because they felt like I was a guest and they wanted to make me feel comfortable, or and that might be true, but how much of that was because I was an older man versus, you know, you're saying that it's difficult for you to talk to other Koreans? Yeah.
Like they would come up to me because they think I'm Korean, but when like I say I don't speak Korean, and they're like, oh, okay, and they just like leave me alone. Yeah. It's harder. So it's like now I only have other like exchange students as friends and no Korean friends.
And I'm wondering how much of this is also tied up with the pandemic. I mean, I just get a sense that there's something about the pandemic that has changed a lot. It's like, I mean, like you see it, for example, in when I first got here, for good or bad, Koreans put a lot of emphasis on appearance, including fashionable clothes. And I guess it's because we all have to wear these masks all the time, maybe. That, I mean, when you look around, the people are dressed always more casually. Like they're always wearing athletic wear, sweatpants. They're not acting the way they used to when I first came here. And I don't know if it's because of the general stress level. And sometimes I get a sense of it with the students in terms of their interaction with me, because on Zoom, that somehow there's just more of a caution, that because you're always being told you have to be vaccinated, you have to wear a mask, you have, they have this websites that always counts the infection rate. You know, so if you go here and you see, this is in English, you know, how many people died yesterday, you know, how many new infections, it's going down. This is half what it was yesterday. And, you know, at one point it was up, hundreds of thousands. And so, you know, you see this every day, you know, it's like, I think that maybe that's somehow part of the impact, that everybody seems to be a little more cautious. So, so what is your situation like? Are you have roommates in the residence hall, or?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and are they from your school, university?
No, they're from like different countries.
Yeah. And things are okay?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, good. So what is your major?
Business. In France, it's global business development, but here it's business administration. Yeah,
and all of the credits will transfer?
Yes.
And how does your English get to be so good? Did you live in US or Canada?
No, I went to an international school. So yeah, ever since I was a kid. So, and I learned both English and Cambodian like at the same time.
Oh yeah? Yeah. I mean, yeah, my experience with Cambodian culture was, I used to go, this was a long time ago, my first year I used to go to the Catholic Church services here in the morning, and there was a visiting group from Cambodia, and they did some traditional Cambodian dance routine at the Catholic Church Mass, and the bishop or the cardinal for Cambodia was with them. It was kind of sad because I think it was a Frenchman, because I assume because of the horrible thing that happened, you know, that they weren't. So it was a French guy. He was a French who was the top Catholic. This is at least 10 years ago, the top Catholic. So I don't know if it still is, but yeah. So are you a senior or a junior? Are you going to?
This is my second year.
And second year.
So, but I only have like a 3-year program. So junior, I guess.
Yeah. Are you going to go to graduate school, or are you?
I think so, but for marketing.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, your English is better than mine, though. I
No.
mean, it's wondering, that's great. So yeah, I mean, if you, I know that the students that we have from France, some of them will ask me after the semester's over, when they go back, if I can write them a recommendation letter if they're going to apply for a graduate program. So of course that's part of my job. So if you need a letter of recommendation, you can always,
Thank you.
So yeah, I think there's an American university in Cambodia.
There is. Yes.
Yeah, I remember because there was starting in 1980, late 1980s, they started setting up these American universities. I think the first one was in Cameroon, and then there was one at the American University in Bulgaria where I was at, and there's one in Central Asia, and there's different, and there's one in Nigeria, and but I don't know how that university in Cambodia is doing. I mean, I knew they were advertising, their university, but I don't know if they're like high profile. Like the American University in Bulgaria, that was a focus of a lot of attention in Bulgaria.
I mean, in Cambodia, it's one of the few like private universities. So a lot of people like want to go there.
Yeah, but they have some kind of Hun Sen have some kind of issue with the university. Because I heard he was having some kind of conflicts with so like there was a European university in Belarus that the European Union set up, and Lukashenko kicked them out, and then there was, of course, George Soros set up some kind of American style university in Budapest, this Central European University, and Viktor Orban, the prime minister, he shut him, kicked him out. They had to move to Austria. So sometimes these universities, for good or bad, the American University in Bulgaria was seen unofficially as an extension of the U.S. government. The U.S. government was providing much of the money for one reason, but whenever there was a graduation ceremony, the American ambassador would always be on the graduation stage as the students received their diplomas. Whenever the board of directors would meet, they would have the ambassador would host. They would come to Bulgaria, and the ambassador would host a dinner. So we had a lot of people, interesting people, come through and talk at the university, partly because they thought that the university was de facto, if not officially, somehow representative of the U.S. government. So we had, heads of state, President Croatia. I think he came at least 3 times while I was there, and officials from different countries. So I don't know if that's like the case at the American University in Cambodia. Like it gets a lot of visitors.
I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, so in terms of I mean, I appreciate you telling me, because I didn't know these things, like the university, what they were doing in terms of monitoring. I mean, I had other issues. Like this is again long before the pandemic. I had a Chinese boy he took my class. I think I failed him, and he took it again, and there was something wrong with him. I mean, and typically when there's something wrong, it also manifests itself like an alcohol abuse. So there was something wrong with the boy, and he started like stalking me. So I think that this is a general, I mean, even today, like there's something about mental health in teenagers in the New York Times. So there's this big focus on mental health these days. It's at least in media coverage. And so I'm not surprised maybe that the Korean authorities and the Korean government is doing more on that. So are you going to stay one semester or longer?
One semester. Because after this, I have to do an internship. It's a requirement for my school in France. Yeah. Yeah, so I have to leave like right away after the semester ends. Yeah.
Is the degree from the French university going to be recognized in Cambodia?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so are you thinking about, you might want to stay in France, or are you going to you think you might want to go back? Do you miss, I mean, are you in contact with your family in Cambodia?
Yes, I am. Yeah. We talk often.
Yeah.
But after my bachelor's degree, I want to maybe go to another country for my master's degree. Yeah. Yeah, instead of staying in France.
Yeah. Do you have any questions before I forget to ask about what my comments or what to include? If you wanted to put more explanation of why you have certain things, you can put the explanation maybe in a footnote citation like you did here, to explain why you're including this statement or some other statement, or, you know, and that way you won't go over the word limit.
Yeah, because I was worried about going over.
No,
the word limit.
the footnotes don't count towards
Okay,
towards the word limit. And so yeah, I mean, I remember, this is all, of course, before the pandemic. Cambodia was a big vacation spot for Koreans because they said it was interesting and it was inexpensive.
Yeah, there are a lot of Koreans in Cambodia and also in like my high school, which is like my first exposure to like the Korean culture. So it's like why I've always wanted to come here. Yeah, and there's a lot of Koreans.
The was it the international high school was a Korean school?
No, it was just like an international school, but there were a lot of Koreans that came to study there.
Yeah, like high school students?
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think, university, you know, entire Korea is really focused on this notion of globalization. Like they really wanted this. So that was the point about these Filipino students. The Filipino students would come and they also built some kind of contacts and ties with South Korea. Some stayed. I don't know, with the pandemic, everything's shutting down, you know, everybody sort of, I'm not getting, you know, information, but I know a number of my students stayed and I went back. Those are the theses that my Filipino students wrote, that I thought I would go through and maybe try to develop something, co-author an article with, but I just never really. They had their projects and I had my projects. My focus is on Eastern Europe and the United States, and they wanted to focus on ASEAN. You know, they wanted to focus on the Muslim insurgency, the Moro Front, and the Abu Sayyaf movement, and they were. So, you know, I just never really was able to go do something with that, with their projects. But I keep them there just in case I think I want to. But, you know, well, that's great. Are there any Cambodian students here, a Cambodian community here in Seoul that you?
I've only met one student here in like our school that is Cambodian, but he's like a student here. He's not an exchange student.
Yeah. What about in Seoul in general?
He's like the only Cambodian I've met here.
Yeah. There's an embassy, right? So Cambodian embassy. Are you registered with them? Do they know you're here?
Well, I guess.
Yeah. Like, so I mean, there's no events like Cambodian embassy events, like for the holiday, the national holiday, or.
I haven't checked.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And what about, like, I mean, I've seen over the years, international students, men studying to be priests. You see, I mean, are there any Cambodian students in the seminary to become Catholic priests that you know of? I mean, again, everything was before the pandemic. They would have these festivals, like there would be a spring festival, and there would be 3 or 4 days, and you would see all sorts of people from set up there. Maybe they'll do it again this spring now that they're trying to get out of this pandemic. But you would see lots of. I mean, there's a campus for a separate campus that's a Catholic seminary where you train people to become priests. And I know there used to be a number of Vietnamese students there, and so I don't know if there's like.
Because I think Cambodian is like predominantly Buddhist. So yeah, there isn't a lot of Cambodians who are Catholic. It's just for the churches in Cambodia are just usually for foreigners who to go. But yeah, I personally don't know any Cambodians who's a Catholic. Yeah. I mean, before the pandemic, the Koreans were everywhere. I mean, even when I was in Bulgaria, I would see in this little town in Bulgaria that was a 2-hour drive south of Sofia. Population of 80,000 people. You would see Korean business people like in the bars and restaurants. They were going everywhere looking for business opportunities. They were going in Bulgaria. So I'm surprised there's not more. Well, I mean, I'm not surprised. I mean, but like before the pandemic, there was a weekly flight to Myanmar from Seoul airport I was told it was really difficult to get seats on. It was always filled. You know, when this is before the military took over again, but you know, like
I don't know in terms of what kind of the Korean business community is doing in Cambodia. Like if they're particularly interested. Typically, my sense is the Koreans are interested if the Chinese are interested. And so I think there's a lot of investment by China in Cambodia.
There are a few Korean businesses, but it's mostly China. It's mostly Chinese.
Yeah, because typically they're, the Koreans want to supply or they want to somehow be involved in the production chain.
Yeah.
That somehow involves China typically. So, well, so that's it. So when do you go back? You're going to go back immediately after in the end of June, huh?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any other questions or anything? I don't know if I made any changes. I don't think I did touch this. I don't think I made any changes here. So. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So
Bye.
good luck with everything. Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Mm-hmm.